So welcome everybody to another show of It's All About Shipping. We're live today with a panel of beautiful ladies, and I'm very excited because it's the first all-female panel that I'm hosting. With me today is Danaibe Zandakou, who is from Greece and the CEO of Navigator Shipping Consultants, the concept founder of Yes Forum, and the Secretary General of the International Propeller Club of Piraeus. Mrs. Helen Booney, who is from the UK, Principal Program Assistant Technical Cooperation Division at the International Maritime Organization. Teresa Peacock, again from the UK, Managing Director of Spinnaker Global and the Secretary of Vista UK. Joanna Chrisan, based in the UK, kind of, Portfolio Manager of Maritime of Informa Connect, and she is the concept founder of Women in Shipping Summit that's held in the context of London International Maritime Week. And Christine Mavromichalis, who's based in the UAE, Vice President of NAS Group, and on HR and talent acquisition matters. Welcome, ladies, to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Lovely to be here in this first all-female panel.
Exactly, and I am very excited to be hosting it today. And of course, we couldn't have chosen a more appropriate topic, I believe, discussing female leadership during this crisis of COVID-19 and generally, and the employment scene under these conditions, where I hope we can exchange some ideas and brainstorm a little bit, provide maybe some solutions, and enlighten our audience on these topics. Feel free, guys, to put any comments in our Facebook live streaming, and I'll bring it to the audience for further discussion. And let's go straight into it. So you're all from different parts of the globe, have different roles and responsibilities. What has been the impact of COVID-19 for you personally and within the general scope of your environment? Danai, if you want to begin, and then we'll go.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for having me here. And it's great to be with such important and powerful ladies. For me, the COVID, it was a kind of needing to happen. I mean, these 2 months were very important to restructure my life, my personal life. I had a lot of time to spend with my daughter. That it was very good, because it's not how much time you spend with the kids, but what you are doing. So I had great quality of time with my daughter. And another thing is that because the last 5 years have been very busy with many projects, I was always saying I would like to have 2 months to organize everything that I have in my mind and just feel that I am trying to do the time management, a good time management. So yes, I can say that I saw my health, I saw my personal life, and I finally got to know my office, because before, because of the trips of traveling and of being around in meetings, I did not have time to speak with my associates and to see what's going on from now on. So yes, it was an opportunity. It was a crisis that brought an opportunity for me to put better priorities and to clarify some projects that I have not done.
Helen?
Yeah, I mean, we really are in unprecedented times. And for me, on a personal level, working from home, looking after a 3-year-old at the same time has been very challenging. Whilst on the one hand, it's just been wonderful to sort of take stock and really appreciate the things that perhaps, before I was too busy and I, took for granted and missed out on so many things. So from a personal level, it's been very rewarding, but I would say very challenging. And we're hoping here in the UK that some of the nurseries will open on the 1st of June. So we can, again, cross that new challenge when that hopefully presents itself. On a professional level, so within the International Maritime Organization, I lead the Women in Maritime program. It's the organization's gender and capacity building program. And within the work that we do, we have 7 regional associations around the world, in Arab states, Asia, Pacific, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa, of course. And through these regional networks, we have had to, if you like, restructure and adapt our training, move it to obviously a more online focus in lieu of these networks not being able to physically meet up. And really, I think there's never been a more it really brings to the fore the relevance and the importance of networking and partnerships, and knowing that you're not facing these times alone, I guess. That has been really important. So from a professional level, it's trying to adapt. Of course, within IMO, the major meetings have been postponed. Staff are working from home. So from that point of view, it's business as usual. The work still continues, but we've just had to adapt. And in some respects, I think if there's any pluses or benefits, if you like, to come out of this, is to say that the organization has been able to really adapt very quickly for something that's just been so unexpected and challenging. So in terms of IT and getting that up and running, we've just had to adapt and change the way that we do things. But that's not necessarily a bad thing either. So in future, things like mentorship, training on unconscious bias, as well as, of course, training on various maritime subjects will still continue, but with a focus of delivering that training, of course, online. So yeah.
Teresa?
Nothing but interesting times.
Indeed, very interesting.
Well, we're about 40 strong at Spinnaker, so a small organisation, but we were very used to working at home. We've always had working at home as an option. So our IT was easy to set up from the very beginning. What was more difficult, I think, was bringing teams of people together, because there's that camaraderie, there's that brainstorming and discussion that happens in the office, and that really, I felt, a big loss. But we've been using Teams, and that's been working fabulously well for us. And actually, I think personally, the biggest impact was, unfortunately, I caught coronavirus. And I was ill for a couple of weeks just when we went into lockdown. But thankfully, it only lasted a couple of weeks and I got over it. But really, you sort of feel that you're invincible and it's fine, we'll soldier on. So that was quite a shock. But from a business point of view, yes, absolutely. We seem to have switched to it quite well. And in fact, in the past where we may have spoken to a client over the telephone or a candidate over the telephone, they're at home, as are we. So we've done a lot more over video conferencing, which actually is much better for building and maintaining your relationships. So, yeah, so not too bad, all things considered.
Joanna?
So for me personally, well, I think I should start by saying that I have been working from home since 2017. So on that front, from my personal experience, it wasn't a tough adjustment. It was something that I was already doing. I think what really struck me this period of isolation and confinement was really the value of communities, those small communities that you have around you, your friends, your neighbors, and of course your family if you're living abroad. So I think certainly the frequency of communication really has increased during that time. Everyone, I think, had a feeling of, oh, we're living some very special times, and we should stay in touch and we should check in on each other. And that was really nice, really warm feeling. On the professional side, because what we do essentially is we try to build a platform for people in this industry to function at the levels that they want to. So for us, what this time meant was really taking a step back and deciding what is relevant, what your relevance is, what value are you actually bringing to the people that you're talking to, which I'm not saying that we weren't considering before, but this has really brought it into the forefront. When you're competing for people's time, attention, and especially in a very difficult context, then you do need to put a lot more thought into what your value is, what your mission is. And I think that was what I have done in the past couple of months. It's just a bit of redefining what I'm working on, why I'm doing it, and trying to stay in touch with people and justify it to them too. And from the same position that Helen was had mentioned, it really is a test of agility and of relationships, and it's undeniable that things, yes, can move in this virtual world and quite fast and quite efficient, but nothing replaces relationships and face to face and the social interaction that you get when you meet people for the first time or when you see people.
Sure, very true. And
Yeah.
Christine?
In absolute honesty, to me, I have been more concerned about the health and safety of my family and friends, and living abroad and being away from your family and your closest friends does create an element of extra pressure, if I could say this. However, from a personal perspective, I haven't really felt an immense stress about my own safety. I mean, obviously, this pandemic has put everyone under an enormous test, and our ability to adapt fast to an unseen situation is something of great importance. While at the same time, working from home and staying at home obviously does come with certain disadvantages, especially if your work demands some traveling and you're used to traveling every second month between countries. However, I think this is a time where everybody is expected to adjust fast and show resilience and creativity in order to address the overall uncertainty that we're all witnessing at the moment.
So very differing perspectives from different angles, and that's quite interesting to share. But following on what Christine just mentioned on dealing with the crisis as such, and the concept of today's panel on being on female leadership, we have seen that probably the actions, or it is argued, rather there's a debate, that the actions of female leaders in countries like New Zealand or Denmark, Finland, Germany, Iceland, etc., are evidence that women have been managing this crisis in a better way. Do you personally agree or disagree with the statement? How do you assess it? Do you believe that indeed the actions were different, or it was the circumstances? It would be nice if I could have your various inputs on this aspect. Let's go with Danai first so we can do the rounds again.
What I can say is that, as we all know, Greece has been in a crisis before this crisis. So we can be very happy to say that, we can manage crisis. And what I have seen in the previous crisis, and I think that I will see also here, is that the women are reacting better in crisis. than in not periods of crisis. What I mean is that because it's very important to see the history always showed that when there was a war, after the war, the men were going back home, wounded and, with all the psychological problems of the war, but the women were the ones that they were trying to rebuild the society, the community. And I think that, yes, we are better during the crisis. And what I am seeing of these leaders is that they are showing a trust in collective common sense. They like one to help the other. I mean, the women, we like the synergies. And it's also very important that we are resilient and we are very pragmatists. Many times when they tell me, are you a optimist or pessimist? I say I'm always realistically optimist, sorry. So yes, I like to be optimist, but when somebody says to me, is it really happening? I say, okay, can I really tell you what will happen? And then decide if you want to be pessimistic or optimistic. So this is what I'm also seeing in these leaders. And I'm happy that we're also seeing that even in the Greek shipping community, we see that the last 5 years, many women are taking over when there is a daughter in the family. In our family, we are 4 daughters. So there was no son, but we also see that in many other families, we see the daughters taking over and the women. And yes, finally, we start thinking big, which is very important, and taking risks, because this is something that we're not used to do, but we're doing lately.
Helen?
I suppose I would address it coming from a slightly different angle. We know countries with women leaders, they perform better. The research is there. Peace agreements where women are included are more durable. Parliaments where women enact more legislation, they tend to enact more legislation on social issues such as health, education, anti-discrimination, etc. Perhaps it is a generalization to say that women leaders during this, unprecedented times, as I said, this is an unprecedented public health disaster. But they have seemed to have responded swiftly, decisively. If you look at Germany, for example, and New Zealand, although of course they've been affected, especially Germany, by this crisis in a way as France has, their death toll is significantly less. Perhaps there is, they don't face the same pressure in terms of the need to feel hyper-masculated. They've appeared to have communicated with their constituents, as I said, effectively. And in my opinion, I think they have rightly been praised for handling this crisis.
And Teresa?
I think that, that there's 2 issues. I think one is working style of women versus men, and one is a personality trait. So I think females tend to be a little bit more collaborative, and they can be a little bit more humble, so are more likely to take the advice of the scientists and the specialist advisors than their male counterparts. So the working style of being a little bit more collaborative, coupled with the personality trait of maybe being a little bit more humble, happy to accept the advice, I think has shown. And I think women are generally a little bit more risk averse. So, and females do very well in insurance, in loss prevention, and those types of environments because they are that little bit more risk averse. So Helen mentioned New Zealand. Now, what she did was she shut down that country before there was even one death. Before there was even one death. So she was looking at risks and taking the advice and made that very quick decision. Now, if you look at somebody like Donald Trump, even recently, he refused to wear a mask when he went out and met people. He said he wanted to project American strength. And he said, I'm not going to cower behind a mask. I think there you have the two extremes of maybe some male traits versus some female traits. And that's why I feel the female leaders have done better managing this crisis, being risk averse, being more collaborative and humble and taking advice. Yes, and just being more collaborative. Very general statement. I know not all women are like that, and I know not all men are like that, so please forgive me, but I'm talking general.
Yeah.
No, and absolutely, there have been plenty of countries with male leaders who have done very well in this crisis.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Joanna?
I think I would have started mentioning two things, and one of them is exactly what Teresa said. For me, I think it's what has made a difference is this diminished ego that these leaders have had. Whereas, other male leaders in these times have come out with all sorts of statements, throwing all sorts of words at each other, or boasting, or doing the whole song and dance about it. Women have been very restrained, and it's not just now, it's a career where all you know about Angela Merkel is that she's Chancellor of Germany and she does her job. You don't really know anything about her lifestyle, anything about what makes her tick. She hasn't been in any scandals. She hasn't been in any controversy. The same with Jacinda. The only thing that you know about her is that she's caring because of what she has displayed within their previous crisis, and that she does her job decisively. And what I would also say is, like it or not, we are facing problems which are big. They're bigger than this period of peace that we've had up until now. Health problems, economic problems, the climate crisis. So what is needed now is cognitive diversity. You can't really solve big problems with the same minds. And for me, this makes the case for women. And I think this is why a lot of positions have opened up recently for women, including in leadership, although there's a lot still to be, let's say, worked on, but it has moved. And I think it's because people are turning and realizing, oh, we need more minds to think about these big issues, these big problems we're having in our company, these big problems we're having in our society. So for me, the crisis is yet another example that there are good leaders and bad leaders, and out of those leaders, some are men, some are women. And it's great to see finally that we can speak and analyze and criticize maybe women leaders. And hopefully we'll get the chance to do so even more in the future. And I think the reason why women have done better in this particular crisis is because we're natural carers. So, very susceptible to pain and to, wanting to alleviate or to avoid, to prevent pain. And by that I mean emotional and physical. So it's a natural reaction to kind of sit down and think about things a bit more, because it affects our health and our well-being.
Great. And Christine?
Gina, I would like to agree with what the ladies have already said. And also I would like to add some data, if I may. So New Zealand has recorded so far 1,504 COVID-19 cases and 21 deaths. So in a population of, with a population of 4.8 million residents, whereas the state have recorded over 1.5 million cases, with the death toll topping 95,000, according to Johns Hopkins University. This data, I got this data today, and over 1/3 of these cases are residing in New York State. At the same time, we should consider that USA has a population of 331 million. So the numbers here are not quite proportionate. Of course, females have traditionally been much better, have had much better skills in housekeeping and better organizing skills, and obviously less ego. However, if we can look closely at the numbers and the proportion that comes out of these numbers, I think it's a bit early for us to have solid assumptions on what's going to be the actual results by the end of the pandemic. But obviously, yes, I mean, I totally agree with the fact that the women have had a better skill in leadership and in delivering results, better results at least.
I think, Christine, and it was great to hear the conversation come back to some numbers and to think about it like that. And what I would say to this, it's not necessarily just the numbers that count and let's say the results itself, but also for me, the way that it's been handled in general. So the level of conversation, the level of protest, the level of just nastiness that kind of generates in everyone else not just anxiety but really negative feelings, which is it's not the case. It just isn't the case with other countries, and in particular with these two, with Germany and New Zealand. And it's the same spectacle in the UK, where there's again so much anxiety-inducing conversation and just so much polarization that it begs the question of not only what are we doing, what are our results, but how are we going about it? What is that? How is that impacting the people around us?
Yeah, and sorry also to say something, because it's also nice to make discussion. I had the opportunity, I'm a young global leader in World Economic Forum. So I had the opportunity to meet the Prime Minister of New Zealand back in 2015, before becoming Prime Minister, when she was a young global leader like I was. The younger generations of women leaders are also, how can I say it in a nice way, not kinder, but they're more caring, because unfortunately, some of the older women leaders, they were a little bit more tough. They were a little bit more strong. I can understand that the percentage of women men, especially in shipping, that were all there, and the percentage of women leaders is just a small percentage. We can understand it, but what I'm seeing from the younger women leaders, because we also have some women in politics, taking as an example the Minister of Education, Niki Kerameos, that she has done a great job in Greece. I think that they are more secure of themselves, that they have support from other women. This is what I see. And this is why we will see more and more women leaders, because they are the women we like to be kind and smiling, but sometimes we were not feeling comfortable, and we were not we were not so true, let's say. As the younger generations coming over, they are doing more what I feel, what their heart says. So it has greater impact to the people, I believe.
Certainly.
My opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a really good point, because also we're seeing young men coming through who don't have that sort of toxic masculinity, and they are much more approachable. And I think some of the traits of the younger men coming through. So, and it's such a shame, because you don't want these young men having to grow up living up to such a masculine stereotype. So I think the younger generation coming through, both women and men, I think we're seeing that change, which is great.
Yeah, I agree. During my research, I speak with a lot of men and women, and in particular about women in shipping and opportunities for women in shipping. And I agree with you, Teresa. With the younger men that I speak with, the reaction is almost as if, how can this be a problem? So they haven't even, they don't even have this concept that this could be an issue, that women aren't having the same experience as men are. And a lot of them are a bit surprised at this fact, and then they consider it a bit more, and then they think, well, and this is their direct feedback, well, if this is the case, then we should really do something about it. So I think a lot of the times it's also a matter of perspective, and the experience that shapes your perspective. And if you as a guy don't have that experience, then it's very difficult to tune in.
True. I think there has also been very, very actually valid points, and there has also been a shift in dynamics in what is expected of a leader, whether within the maritime context or on a wider context, and that could probably be a discussion on its own. But I think it's right what you're saying, that maybe in different times and some years back, the female prototypes that were appearing of leaders had to act in a certain way to be considered effective leaders. Whether now we're all embracing a new style of leadership and a new need for a new style of leadership, which is hopefully a more positive note. But moving on from the actual dealing of the crisis and the actions that these leaders have taken in keeping the people and the country safe, we also, of course, have the economic aspect of it. And this is what some leaders have opted, to put as a priority, especially at early stages. And different countries have taken on different programs like the furlough scheme or some kind of subsidy, state aid. Do you believe from your various experiences that these are proving to be sufficient measures going forward to support employment, small businesses, the economy on a wider context? Who wants to go first? Danai, you.
Yes. Look, this is an unprecedented situation. I mean, nobody knows. It has never. I have spoken even with people that they were alive during the Second World War, and they were 20, 25 years old. And I asked them if what was happening now was happening then, and they told me no. I mean, there was a kind of freedom during Second World War. In coronavirus, this freedom was not there. So this is never seen before. So we don't know if the measures that will be taken now will be okay for the future. What we can say is that yes, there are some measures taken, and we have. And it is important to empower the economies, because we will see a lot of unemployment. And unfortunately, this starts hitting the women, because many managers are thinking of firing people. And I'm sure, I'm not in the mind of all of them, I cannot be, but they're thinking of the young people and the women first. So, and this is very, very difficult because of the homeschooling and of the children that we're having home. I'm having an older, my daughter is 11 going to 12, so it was better to have her at home. I mean, she could do things by herself. But yes, it's going to need many women voices before taking decisions for all our governments. What I can say from my side is, because I'm running the first mentoring network in Greece, I4U, which is mentoring small and medium women entrepreneurs, I can see that the women, when we are starting having families, unfortunately, we're leaving the fight for our rights, and we choose the family. This is a big percentage, but it is also because we're not having the opportunity of doing otherwise. If I can say something how it can be done, we have to raise more voices, and we have to choose the way of synergies with more women, and to have specific strategies that we will present to our governments. This is not easy. This is not easy. I have not, it's good also to hear of some facts. I have not found many women who are long-term committed to change the position of the woman. So it needs many voices to make the difference, and long-term voices for many years, no matter what happens. So yes, it's not easy to work 12 or 15 hours per day. It's not, but I don't like to hear from women asking me how you can do this. I would like to ask, can we do it together? Not how you can do this. If I can, many other women can. So it's good to exchange views, and this is why I'm happy to participate in panels like this, because I get strength from women like all of you, but it's also an opportunity to say the other side, that we have to try more.
Helen?
I've forgotten the question. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I mean, at the moment in the UK, there's furlough schemes, there's grants. The government has issued various sort of taken, I think, actually quite good steps in terms of tackling people who are self-employed. And as I say, there are I'm very fortunate. We're working from home. I still receive my salary. But I know that in times of crisis, women are disproportionately affected. And this pandemic that we're experiencing, it will be no different. Will it lead to unemployment? Yeah, absolutely, because at some point in time, we have to find a way of getting back to work and living and adapting, I guess, to what will become the new normal. So, it's very difficult to predict what will happen, but in terms of, are we heading for a recession? Yeah, absolutely. So you don't have to be an economist to hold up my crystal ball and be able to say that. It's very difficult, very worrying times for people.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to the strength and support that our networks find being part of these associations is tremendous, because they're facing similar challenges. In these very uncertain times. So yeah, it's a very worrying and difficult time for many people.
Maybe also Teresa and Christina, because you work on the recruitment for Fando, so you have a more insight on what exactly is happening from that side and what you foresee going forward.
Of course, yeah. I'd like to share some data here. According to the national agencies in the UK unemployment surged to 1.3 million in the first 3 months of the year. We should mention also the figures in the US. In the past 8 weeks, there has been a total of 36.5 million jobless claims. A YouGov poll of 1,287 US adults conducted between the 16th of April and the 17th of April states that 61% of them see an economic depression coming in the next year, while 34% of Americans think we are already in the midst of one. At the same time, a YouGov survey in April in the UAE has shown that 64% of UAE residents and 38% of Saudi residents expressed worries about losing their jobs. Qatar Airways has announced that they intend to reduce 20% of their workforce, while Emirates Airlines are to cut about 1/3 of their staff, their total staff. So obviously any state aid towards the business sectors that have been hurt the most, like the hospitality sector, tourism, retail, aviation, art workers, shipping, obviously is more than welcome. And I think in these very difficult times, and until the economy gets back on track, we should all consider how we can all contribute to in order to maintain and save as many livelihoods as possible. I would like to add a small comment, it's not made by me, but by someone very famous. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. As once very famously JFK said, addressed to the US citizens. So I would say that it's time, this is the time for the more privileged layers of our society to give back. And if that means the loss of the annual bonuses or a cut on the salaries, a significant pay cut perhaps for the middle managers in order to sustain the livelihoods of their co-workers. If this needs to be done, it should be done. And at the same time, I should mention as a last point, the significant help that the majority of the ship owning community in Greece has already shown to the Greek government and the Greek people by providing significant funds, proving their solidarity and patriotism under these very unprecedented times.
Thank you. And Teresa?
Well, I think in the UK, I think the actions that the government have done so far have been very good. The furlough scheme, and as Helen mentioned, the small business grants and so on. I think the danger time will be when the furlough scheme ends and people are being brought back into the business. That's when I think we will start seeing bigger redundancies. And look at who's going to be most vulnerable at that point in time. Spinnaker has, we run the HR Association and we do salary benchmarking and we collect all sorts of data. It's about 30,000 pieces of data, so it's a significant piece of work. And if we look at the women in our survey, 76% of women are below management. 76% of women in shipping are below management level. And when you look at companies and organizations making redundancies and letting people go, they're going to be looking at those lower level roles initially. And that's why women are going to be extra vulnerable in this situation. But I think if we look at, are there going to be any particular industries that are affected? I mean, if we look at the maritime industry, we are getting increased requirements from banks, financial institutions, because over the next 6 to 12 months, there's going to be a lot of organizations needing to restructure their finances and their debt. And that then will lead on, of course, to an increased input on the legal side as well. So if you're looking for who's going to be busy over the next 6 to 12 months, it's the financial institutions and the banks and lawyers. In the UK, we have a requirement to report on gender. So if you look generally in the UK pay gap is 16.2%. The maritime industry globally, the pay gap from our 30,000 pieces of data is actually just over 42%. So the difference in pay in the maritime industry is just over 42%. Actually, if you look at aviation, that's about the same, and manufacturing and financial and banking, they're all at that 40% or just above level. So although it sounds horrendous, it's actually on a par with those other quite male-dominated environments. So I think going forward, what governments need to do, if they want to improve things economically, is they have to improve childcare. With childcare, we are not going to get the economy moving because we're not going to be able to get women back to work. Women are the primary carers. So if governments can get any help at all at the moment, they should be propping up the care institutions, the preschool and the schools. That way we can get women back into work, and that women won't be so disadvantaged going forward when companies are back reassessing and restructuring.
And Joanna?
Yeah, I agree with Teresa in the sense that, of course, and thank you, Teresa, for the data. And I think, yeah, you're very spot on when you talk about what's coming up for us. What I see happening is, we've managed to highlight in our society some very deep vulnerabilities on the professional front, and I think a lot of people have now had this wake-up call as to the security of their jobs. So as an example, one of my neighbors has been working his entire life in oil and gas, so 2 months on, 2 months off, and he was saying to me just the other day, I think this is it for my career of 20 years in oil and gas. It's not the future anymore. I'm going to start studying. So it's a matter of a lot of people asking the question, how can I retrain at this moment so that I'm one step ahead? One thing. The other thing, I think, and I see the same problem as Teresa regarding childcare and maternity, return to work, etc. And what I see as one positive coming out of this crisis, perhaps, is the realization that working from home is absolutely possible. And this maybe opens up some doors for women too, because let's say we don't necessarily need the entire responsibility lifted, the entire responsibility of family care lifted, but we need to be able to do what we do best, which is everything at the same time. So have a flexible arrangement where I can also take care of my family, I can also take care of my household, and I can still do my job, and my partner can do the same. And that's when it becomes an actual team. So whereas in the past, working from home was a bit of a perk and a bit of an exception to the rule, you know, you were lucky if you got this. Perhaps now companies will see the benefit in, you know, even if you talk about it from the bottom line point of view, in reducing assets and in reducing the office space that they use and the equipment that they use, etc. And you know, you kind of start solving two problems at the same time. This is what I'm hoping will happen.
Yes, but sorry to say, because it's very important what you say. This has to start, however, from the family and the school. What I mean is that it's very important for all of us to get into the schools, to speak to young people. I am doing it, and I see big change in these 10 years that I'm doing it. And I'm very happy that, like Gina is bringing us today here, and I have told her that she is a young woman, that she's fighting a lot for the women and to create role models.
Yeah.
And it is we have to say a big bravo to her and to all the young people that they try to change what they have found from previous generations.
Absolutely.
So the problem that the position of the woman is this one, is that when a woman wanted to think big and to do big things, in many cases, unfortunately, the mother was stopping her. And this is something that I did not have it in my life. And I'm very happy, and I thank my mother, because when I was saying something and my father was saying, yes, to go there, you're traveling a lot, your daughter, my mother was saying, do it. And she's a mother of 4. She's running businesses, but I knew that inside her, of course, she also wanted to, you know, to be with my child, because she loves children. She has 4 children, but it has to start from the family, and we have to get more role models into the schools.
That actually kind of smoothly brings on to what I was going to ask next, because you've obviously all touched again on different perspectives of females and being targeted now as being an easier target, or having to work from home being an extra burden in some aspects. And then I finally making this comment on perceptions and bringing it from it's from the home that everything begins. But what I would ask your input on, because as we're coming towards, unfortunately, the closing of the show, even though we've got a lot more to discuss, maybe we should do it in a second round, is that generally attracting females to the industry and the younger generation in general has always been a challenge, and attracting talent to the industry, or for women and the youth, you know, seeing themselves going high within this sector. Following this crisis, and especially at these times, do you foresee any area of opportunity? Is there hope out there? What would you share? What would be the message? Joanna, you're smiling. Do you want to go first, or we can take it the other way around now?
No, we can go the other way around. I'll formulate my idea in the meantime.
Well, I agree with what Joanna said earlier on about businesses and their assets, and maybe allowing more people to work from home and having a small office. And Charles Taylor in London have done exactly that. Their hot desk, they allow far more flexible working from home, and they have a much smaller office. So now is the perfect time for organizations to look at restructuring their business and what they can do. One, it will be an operational cost saving, as Joanna said, but also it will give them access to a much wider pool of talent. Right. there are some exceptionally talented women out there. And if organizations were to give them a little bit more flexibility, they would be able to bring them in and really harness that talent. Now,
Yeah.
Theresa May, ex-Prime Minister of the UK, she is suggesting that the default position should be people are able to work from home, and the onus should be put on the company to justify why that person needs to be in the office 5 days a week. And that's what she's suggesting. And I think what a wonderful idea. Instead of and this goes for men just as much as women, for all of us. There was a survey by the HR Grapevine. It's an online magazine. I don't know if any of you get it, but there was a survey on there, and they said 69% of people they surveyed now want to work from home more often. 69. Yeah. Now that they've experienced it, they want to work from home more often, men and women. So now we can prove that it works and that productivity doesn't have to suffer. So yes, it's a great opportunity for organizations to save costs and have access to a wider pool of talent.
But as we're saying about numbers, I want to tell you for another research that has been done to 1.5 million high-level employees in companies that they're also in the 500 Forbes. And the results were a little bit worrying. Why? Because the 45 plus men and women before COVID were saying that they don't want to work from home. They prefer to work from the office. The younger generations were saying that we want to work from home. What happens now is the opposite. What I mean, the 45 plus were adapted very quickly, much quicker than the younger generations to the home working. And it's a big research that has been done. So what I would like to ask, and I also ask myself, is we really want to make it happen and there are problems and we do not, or we try to find problems? Because if we really love what we're doing and we want to have family, be successful, we need to make sacrifices. So if we all want to work from home, I fully agree with you. I can also work from home, is that we must also understand that working from home maybe means that we're losing 2 to 3 hours to go to our office. So we must be more productive. And in shipping, unfortunately, we have not seen, in my company, I have not seen more productivity at home. Why? Because the younger generations are not reading and they're not being informed so much. So the brainstorming that we were doing in the office was helping us to bring our knowledge to them. So yes, I say yes to the home, to working from home, because this will be much better for us. And what I mean us is the ones that we work 15 years plus. But the younger generations, they have to work and to read and to try much more because they will not have the knowledge that comes from the brainstorming in the office. Because in Greece, the Greek shipping miracle has been created by the brainstorming, by saying to each other what's happening, by screaming, by laughing, by crying, but all together. So the human contact is making, for us as Greece, that we're number one in the world, the shipping miracle. So
Dana, you can always scream via Zoom, right? You can always scream via Zoom.
You can scream, but you know something, and they scream more, and they can mute me also if they want. But you know something, it's the knowledge comes from reading. from exchanging opinions. And sorry to say, because I'm working with many young people, I'm not saying it and I'm not working with young people, is that they are not being informed by things. You understand what I mean? Because yes, we can say yes, but the researchers say that they are not adapting. So there is a problem of adaptability. And there is also a problem of trust if they will cover their knowledge in their house. Sorry, but these are my concerns this period.
It seems that Mark Zuckerberg disagrees slightly with you, because only yesterday he announced that by the end of the decade, half of Facebook's employees will be working from home.
Yeah, Twitter and the same thing.
If I had young people, if I was having young people like Mark, I would stay in Hawaii, not in my house. So.
But it's a valid point, and I think getting the balance right and having a mixture of being able to work from home, being able to get to the office.
Yes.
We just need to in the presenteeism of having to be in the office 5 days a week from 8 to 6.
Yes, and also look at the middle management structure and all those soul draining processes and structures within organizations, and shipping is no exception. Which only happen because people don't trust other people because they haven't been given a chance. This has been a global experiment. Like it or not, everyone works from home. Like it or not, everyone needs to trust everyone. From what I've seen, there hasn't been anyone slacking off. Certainly, the crew managers that I spoke to are up to their ears in, dealing with crew changes, in ensuring everyone stays safe and healthy and gets back home. Within my own company, there's been a lot of innovation, a lot of thought around how we can do things, other things, and a lot of communication. Certainly, although everyone misses the face-to-face interaction. So certainly, I'm not an advocate for a fully virtual, segregated existence, but I am certainly for giving people flexibility, because that gives them space to be creative, to be innovative. They're happier, and we maybe get rid of some of those old structures that we don't need anymore. And when and again, things are related. So when you reduce that traffic that commuting brings with it, high real estate prices in huge professional centers like London and Berlin and New York, and so there's a lot that comes with this changing the way that we work. And I'm hoping that also this means good things for women, because as far as I've read, some people are touting digital as this new frontier for women. And according to the last World Economic Forum global survey, that's not the case, because women don't train in those jobs, and they don't enter the tech sector. So hence they won't enter the maritime sector via the tech opportunity. So I think the only way, and I've spoken to so many people these days of the pandemic, and so many people have said to me, I've started learning this, I've started getting into that, I researched a master's program. And you only get time to do those things if you have the time, not if you're taking 3 hours to go to work. Exactly. And come back, and then you're wiped out, and you have a bottle of wine, and the next morning you're back at it.
And Helen and Chris, if you would just have like to make any comments to that last question before we go into concluding remarks. Unfortunately, we are running out of time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. It's about turning a crisis into an opportunity. We are 10 years of attaining to the 2030 agenda and the related sustainable development goals. We know that if you look at Zika, Ebola outbreaks, it distorts healthcare. So you've got disruption to antenatal, access to sexual health, calls for domestic violence hotlines have increased during the pandemic. We know that burden does fall disproportionately on women in terms of childcare, and I guess it's how we adapt and overcome. I mean, for example, this week, so the 18th of May, the Pacific Women in Maritime Association, one of our regional networks, they celebrated a day for women in maritime. It's not an official day on the IMO calendar, but yet again, it's another event to give visibility to women whose efforts are often not recognized or undervalued in the sector.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating opportunities to, I'm getting in my daughter, she's about to storm the room, sorry. Creating opportunities for the next generation, knowing that there's a career in maritime in the first place and an attractive career. In terms of IMO, as we know, shipping obviously is very much male dominated, but in terms of IMO, in terms of the staff, the secretariat, they've made a real effort to address work-life balance, childcare issues, and mental health as well. It is a huge area that we haven't really had a chance to sort of tap into that there during these discussions. Yeah, it's exciting times. It's definitely interesting times. I mean, I had all these wonderful ideas that I was going to learn Italian and do this, and it just hasn't happened. But that doesn't mean that I won't come out of this a better person, or understanding that it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to not be the best I can in my job and my family life 100% of the time. It's just not humanly possible. And it's strange times where you're missing, you know, physical contact, and it's about creating an enabling environment, and you know, for the maritime sector to be sustainable and to attract the best talent. And we know that diversity drives profitability. So why aren't we doing that? Why is the conversation still about gender and not about competencies?
Yeah.
So these are all really exciting things to come out of it. We touched earlier upon women leaders and how during the pandemic they really stepped up to the plate. And I think, again, this is an example where perhaps, you know, in future crises, some of these lessons could be learned and adapted, and their leadership style may be replicated. So, so lots to digest and learn. And for us, if I may say, we are undertaking, we've undertaken a data study with Worcester International to count the number of women in maritime. Last year's World Maritime theme, Empowering Women in the Maritime Community, there were numerous events held, and we want to not just continue the momentum, but actually walk the talk and have some tangible outputs from that. So when you start talking about how you can empower women and enact sort of gender-friendly legislation, if you will, you've got to know what numbers, what's your starting point.
Yeah.
That's something really important that we're still progressing and continue along with our other activities. So, yeah. Sorry, that was really long.
No, and actually, I think maybe because we did have other topics to discuss today, and I was thinking we should definitely have a second round, because unfortunately we're running over time. But before we close, because we've had a very interesting and I believe very insightful discussion, so maybe Helen, leading from your point that you're gathering the data with Worcester International, the policy reform question should go to a closer time when we've got more data to discuss whether there's a need or not. But I would like you could all give us some comments or input or advice rather to the females out there of our industry, and in a wider context during these difficult times that we're all facing and the challenges we're all facing in our own each respect, where it's at home or professionally. And going forward, into the after post-COVID era?
So can I start?
Yeah, I think we'll go the usual way.
I will say that the women are multitaskers.
Mm-hmm.
We can do many things at the same time. We are great in communication skills. We can communicate. What we want, we can communicate it in a great way. We're patient. We're peacemakers. Except late in the night, if somebody's not, we're not happy with somebody, we're not, but we are peacemakers. We are responsible. We can manage the people. I mean, we're good in the human relations management, very good. We are responsible, and we are good in crisis management. So if you put all these characteristics down, we can do whatever we want. What we have to do is to believe in ourselves, to be less emotional. It's great that we are so emotional, the women, but we have to try to be a little bit less emotional, or to choose when to be emotional and if it affects us. After listening to all these great women, and after knowing so many other around me, what I can say is that I feel strong. I'm not going to stop working even from home or from the office the maximum I can, because at the end of the day, if you love what you're doing, you never work. So I think that I'm very happy with my life. If I go back, I would do the same things, because at the end, I'm very, very happy that I wanted to see the women more powerful and to do these discussions, because before 2010, we were not having this kind of discussions, and we were not feeling so strong. So I'm very happy that we're having role models. Let's work a little bit more for our daughters and for the girls that are starting from the school. This is what I can say.
And to hopefully take it to the next level that Helen was mentioning, discussing competences rather than equality, but we've got some time ahead.
Okay, it may take some time, but it will happen. It will happen. But I'm very happy that I am with all of you, and we had this great discussion, because I'm leaving also this discussion stronger, and I will have a better weekend. So thank you all.
Helen?
I mean, to me, I guess it would be the power of visibility. So many examples where I've said to women from IMO associations, when you're undertaking any sort of activity, I guess be confident and believe in your abilities. So often we have a conversation where they feel they're not good enough. It's almost like there's, we suffer from an imposter syndrome. We don't like sort of, I don't know, acknowledging our sort of achievements, or singing our own praises. But yeah, I guess the saying, in a world where you can be anything, be kind, is something that's really ringing true at the moment. We don't know what's on the other side of all this, but I like to think that we'll come out with different perspectives on what really is important, and perhaps maybe something interesting with to consider, maybe to take something like an idea forward. Maybe we could have a brainstorming session aside from this discussion, and we walk the talk. We take one subject or one area that perhaps we can all lend our expertise to during the pandemic, and see how we could take that action forward to advance gender equality within our relevant roles and networks.
I agree. Let's commit.
Challenge you all to let's find some common ground where we can realistically take a project forward. I think that would be quite exciting, and
yeah,
my time when my daughter goes back to school on the 1st of June.
No, we'll commit to that. I believe that's a great idea and initiative. Teresa?
Well, I think that, maybe try not to put too much pressure on ourselves. Let's not obsess about being super productive. Everybody during lockdown wants to, as Helen said, learn a new language, or I'm going to write that novel, and then disappointed with yourself when you don't do it, when actually what you are today is enough. And it's recognizing that you are enough as you are today. And also recognizing that self-care is not an indulgence. Self-care is essential for one's mental health. So taking some time out and doing things just for yourself, I think is so, so important. You don't have to be super productive or lazy. It isn't one or the other. There is a happy medium, and be happy attaining that. And just, as Helen said, be kind to yourself.
Excellent. Christine?
I totally agree with the ladies, and I do also think that we should all try to stay as optimistic as possible. And I think the main target is would be to stay conscious throughout this phase, and try to manage our emotions in the most productive way. Try to pull inspiration from almost anything. Try to see the positive, This week I finished watching The Last Dance, which is a documentary about Michael Jordan. And he's a super athlete, efforts, his resilience, his hope, how hard he tried to bond to keep his team, the Chicago Bulls, bonded and win all these NBA championships one after another. And I think that's the exact spirit that we should all try to maintain right now. To stay focused, to stay united, to try and help our co-workers, or our family members or our friends who feel more intimidated and overwhelmed from the overall situation, and perhaps allow the mini Michael Jordan that I would like to think that we all hide deep inside us, to come out. And this way we can all hope for a better future, at least in the following months, hopefully, when the situation will be sorted on a national level, and we will be possibly witnessing better healthcare, more precautions at the workplace, higher health and safety standards, and hopefully we will resume some of our previous life.
Excellent. And Joanna?
For me, I think the three things that are super important, and I would like anyone that I speak to take away with is just be brave, have courage. These are unusual times, so just be brave, make a decision, or just even start thinking of making the change, and then keep learning, and in the end put yourself forward. So don't stick around in the shadows. You've got something to say. You've got this. You've done the job. You have the experience. Put yourself forward, and then everything else follows. So this is my what I would advise my younger self, and maybe do yoga as a cherry on the cake.
Well, unfortunately, even though I'm sure discussion could last for a few more hours, we will have to reschedule a second session. I truly believe that we should do it because we had some other interesting questions to discuss. But I think that today we shared very insightful information and thoughts, and brainstormed a lot and advice for the audience. And hopefully closing on a very positive note. I think we should also take up Helen's suggestion and do a private brainstorming session and then bring it forward and actually follow it through.
Yeah.
Make the most of it. And thank you very much, ladies. I truly enjoyed this all-female panel and our discussion. Danai, Helen, Teresa, Christine, Joanna, thank you very much for being on It's All About.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
We will be announcing the next date of our second part of this show and our brainstorming initiatives. Thanks once again, ladies. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.